Hi and hello, watch fans, and welcome to another edition of the Real Time Show. With me, your friendly neighborhood jeweler, Alon Ben Joseph. Today, I'm extremely honored and proud to welcome to the virtual studio my childhood hero, Mr. Michel Jordi. Welcome.
Yeah, hello everybody, and thank you, Alon, for inviting me to your show. I'm looking forward to a great exchange with you and hopefully being able to give some inspiration to our listeners.
The honor is really mine. Thank you so much for sitting down with us because I literally follow you from the meteoric rise of your success. And that proves how old I am because we have old, young people, old and young watch collectors, irrelevant of their age. If our dear listeners still remember the Michel Jordi, I salute you because then you are OG watch collectors because I am vintage 1979. So with the rise of Swatch, G-Shock, and Le Clip is where I got in contact with Michel Jordi. If you know what I'm talking about, I salute you. Now, if you don't know who I am talking about and sitting down with, don't worry, no harm, no foul. Mr. Jordi is such a legend. He doesn't need to do anything, but he is still super active. He was a bit on the down low in the watch industry, and our dear friend and TRTS network member Adrian Buchman dropped me a line out of the blue. He's like, "Alon, do you know who Michel Jordi is?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "Would you like him on the show?" I'm like, "Whoa, I will be amazed." He says, "Okay, I'll set it up." As he said it, like he always does, he delivers on his promise. He connected me to Mr. Jordi. Mr. Jordi is super responsive. He says, "I would love to come on the show. But before you do so, I want to send you my book." I said, "Okay, it will be an honor." So he sent Rob and me his book. We both read it. It's called Ignite That Spark, 10 Commandments of Entrepreneurship by Mr. Jordi, Serial Disruptor. Super cool book, super fun. It's not too thick, very hands-on, like an entrepreneur is and should be. And Mr. Jordi is extremely generous. He's offering our community, the listeners, the TRTS network, 10 of his books. So, if you're not part of the TRTS community yet, drop David, Rob, or I a DM, message, email, and we'll send you the link to the WhatsApp community. We'll add you. Mr. Jordi doesn't ask anything in return. He's all about giving back. So we salute him. I do want to do something for him. So we're going to make a little competition. I want you to share in the WhatsApp community if you do or didn't know Mr. Jordi and his amazing products, and we'll review them, what he's done in all these decades. And I want you to follow him on LinkedIn. So his handle is Michel Jordi, MicelJordi. Let's thank him for the generosity by liking and following him on LinkedIn. I talk too much. I'm going to shut up. Mr. Jordi, the mic is yours. Please walk us through your epic career in the watch business and take as long as you need.
Thank you for this smooth and wonderful introduction. As you mentioned, I'm Michel Jordi. I think it's important to mention the Michel. And Michel being spelled Michel. My gender is male, so that's said. Michel Jordi, born in Switzerland, in Grenchen, Switzerland, which is the hometown of the Swatch. My father was a watchmaker there at Ebosch SA, and so I grew into a watchmaking family. And actually, my father wanted me to become a tool maker for movements in Grenchen, but I said to him, "Look, Dad, that's not for me. What I want to travel. I want to get the world, and I want to carry the Swiss watches and the image of Swiss watches around the world." But Those were the years when I was in my early teens or childhood. And of course, at that time, I would never have imagined that I would one day be able to found my own company, create my own brand, Michel Jordi of Switzerland.
That's very short and very modest, because I want you please to walk us through, and I see three major breakthroughs, innovations, and historic chapters in your personal career, life, and branding cycle, which is Le Clip, the Ethno, watch and trend and lifestyle brand, and the Twins watch. So let's start at the start. How did you start in the watch business, and how did you go about, and what was the first project?
So maybe I give a small introduction prior to that. I left my hometown, Grenchen, Switzerland, where, as I mentioned, my father worked at the ETA factory. I went to Geneva in 1969. I spent my first night on the floor of my sister's studio. Tried to find the room next day, which I took for about, the rent was 250 Swiss francs in those years. And I took the phone book the next day. ABC went through the book for what watch companies were available in Geneva. And A, Aetos, B, Bove, and C, Cami Watch. At that time, Mr. Removile was the general manager of Cami Watch. And so I had an interview there with him, and he had me right on the spot. And 3 months later, he gave me a raise of 500 Swiss francs. And then at the end of the year, he raised my salary by another 500 francs. It was really amazing and a very, very fast start. What we realized then that in the early 70s, the Swiss watch industry was in big trouble and under pressure from the Japanese watch industries, who came up with the quartz watches, which were very, very thin and much more attractive than the Swiss watches. And there was another thing which was amazing by the Japanese watch industry. All their watches were equipped with metal bracelets, whereas the Swiss had only leather straps. And you can imagine in hot countries like Middle East or Asia or South America, um, it was very difficult or very short life for those leather straps. So all Japanese watches were equipped with metal bracelets. So I realized that suddenly in Switzerland there were very, very few factories who produced metal bracelets. One of the only brands in those years was Rolex, who already offered their watches with metal bracelets. So I told Mr. Weil, or the boss at that time, that we need to find a way to bring metal bracelets to our watches. So he said to me, Jordi, you have a good idea. So try to find suppliers around here who can produce these metal bracelets. In Switzerland, there were very, very few sources and very expensive, over 50 Swiss francs per bracelet. And then I wrote to the Chamber of Commerce in Switzerland. We got certain information. Then I got in contact with the Swiss embassies abroad, in Hong Kong, Japan, etc. And I found certain interests and names which I wrote to, and they came to Geneva to Camiwatch to present their collection. And one day, this company came, Bear Company Limited, BEAR, like the animal bear. It was amazing, the collection they had. So I was really flabbergasted. I asked them which hotel they stayed. They told me we stayed at the Hotel de Berg. I checked my watch all day, and at 5 o'clock on the dot, I left the company, went to the first telephone booth, no mobile phones then. That was back in 1970. I called them and asked them if I could see them. I went to see them at their hotel, and I proposed them to open a branch office in Switzerland. We made a joint venture. 6 months later, I sat on a plane to Japan, and that's where this new and my first independent venture started at age 23. We did over 1 million Swiss francs in sales the first year. After 5 years, 10 million, and after 15 years, 25 million in sales, which was my first venture and where I must admit we made a lot of money, and it was the base of my future career.
I love these stories, especially from these youngsters with a great legacy like yours. Is in these years, we always speak about the quartz crisis and solely about the quartz crisis. Now, we with the long-time collectors might know that the Swiss weren't too keen on metal bracelets, and that came to light due to the Royal Oak designed by Gerald Genta for Audemars Piguet, because nobody wanted that watch back in the day, especially not steel, maybe precious metal bracelets. But it's actually very interesting, your story. So thank you for sharing that and schooling us on that topic. In addition to that question, could you maybe shed a light now or in the next chapter that you're going to tell us how intense the quartz crisis was? You were at the heart of the tornado, of the storm in Switzerland. Can you incorporate that feeling and the sentiment that you were living while you tell us the next chapter, please?
Yeah, Alan, it was very scary. It was very scary. And actually, I still don't realize today what it took, and almost through a miracle that the Swiss watch industry went through it and managed to survive, thanks to many reasons. And as you just mentioned, Audemars Piguet with the Royal Oak, designed by Gerald Genta, as you said, it was the first watch really in history with an integrated bracelet, which also paved the way for metal bracelets on watches and helped me a lot to really be successful and get into this industry. And then I would say that the great moment and interesting milestone was when the Japanese and also American watch manufacturers, they startly came with LED on LCD watches, LED, LCD, digital watches. And I think this was really a turning point because the Swiss watch industry, they just did not believe in that type of watches and didn't want to go or enter into this field at all because this was electronics and had nothing to do with mechanical watch manufacturing. But then there were a few people who had a vision, and one of them was Audemars Piguet, and Breguet, who came out with a tourbillon watch, and then all that was in the 80s, late 80s, and we had a guy called Jean-Claude Piver, who also had the vision that in the long run, the Swiss watch industry, they should stay on mechanical watches. And that is where, when he bought the brand Blancpain and brought out mechanical watches under the Blancpain brand. And I think this was definitely one of the turning points, which also led to the fact that Nicolas Hayek invested and in the watch industry and founded the group SSIH, which was a joint venture from GVC and Azuag, and he formed the Swatch Group in the early 80s. And I think this was the big turning point of the Swiss watch industry.
You mentioned some epic names. did you work in your career with Mr. Genta, Mr. Hayek Senior or Junior, with Bivel? I guess at Audemars Piguet was Milan or not yet. That was maybe the Audemars family probably at the helm.
Yeah, Mela came later.
Yeah.
I must say, I never worked with them directly. I had met later with the Swiss Ethnowatch, Michel Jordi, Swiss Ethno. I had met Nicola Hayek 3 times for very, very important and critical discussions, which were very interesting. But I never worked with many of these. But we can say that the turning point with when Nicola Hayek invested in the Swiss watch industry, this was really, really crucial and which saved the Swiss watch industry. But we have to mention one name there, which is very rarely mentioned of, which is Dr. Ernst Tomke, because I believe that he was the visionary. He is the one who really had the vision and created the Swatch watch, and which was the start, the beginning of the revival of the Swiss watch industry. And I would dare to say that without Ernst Tomke, it would have been difficult to achieve the results which and the change which after happened in the Swatch Group.
Linking the Swatch Group to your story, obviously a lot of people claim and say Mr. Hayek solely made the Swiss watch industry survive with the big pivot of making plastic watches that you can't repair at a low price. Now, me as a kid, I vividly remember the picture of Andy Warhol with a clip and a watch inside. And I was happy to find that picture back in your book again. Dear listeners, if you want to see what the heck I'm talking about, just Google the artist Andy Warhol and then Le Clip watch and you'll see the pictures. I believe you even collaborated with him, but maybe save that story. Tell us first, how did you come up with the idea to make, because Pop Swatch basically learned that idea from you, did they?
Yeah, the Pop Swatch, yes, of course. But I would say really the starting point was the Swatch watch. And the idea of the clip, happened to me, I think it was one afternoon and one night. It was born during one night. It was a vision, and I don't know who of our listeners or yourself, but remember that in the 60s and 70s, most jewelry shops had uh, table clocks in their watch rooms, large, let's say about 15 by 15 centimeter size or 20 by 20, very heavy metal clocks were standing on their counter, which gave the time with any kind of watch brands. It was an advertising to advertise watch brands, and the shape was a little bit inclined. It was a triangle form, and I once came across. I looked for new ideas for watch bracelets, and I saw there on the desk of this design agency one of those table clocks, but the shape of the clock was the shape of a clothespin of this heavy metal thing. And when I saw that clothespin there, and it was the area where all the Swatch was very, very successful. The Swatch watch. That the idea came to me immediately that to change this, miniaturize it first of all, and produce it in plastic, and so that the watch could be worn on everywhere except on the wrist. And this was actually our promotional slogan: the clip, the watch to wear anywhere except the wrist. And that was the starting point. This was in September 1985. I went back home. I couldn't sleep all night. I saw the whole picture. I saw the business plan. I saw the idea from A to Z. And I went back the next day to that design studio. I bought a drawing for 1,000 francs and then started the next day designing and working on how that miniaturized watch could be made into a product. And for me, actually, like the Swatch watch and Le Clip, they were not watches really. For me, they were fashion accessories. I think it was a new trend, a new era, colors, fun, and also, I mean, at the very, very affordable price, 50 Swiss francs. I mean, this was it. I would say that even today, I think the Swatch watch at 50 francs is probably the cheapest product which you can buy. It gives you lifestyle, precision, and time, and fashion.
I want to jump in here, if I may,
Yes?
because one of the chapters in your book, part 3, and that's chapter 3.2, follow your gut. I remember that vividly. It's something that I also truly believe in. Now, I remember a part in your book that the pricing strategy for Le Clip. All the consultants and everybody around you told you to price it at 9 Swiss francs and 99 cents or something like that, around 10. And you said, no, it has to be just below 50. And that was your gut feeling. Talk us through that, because the Swatch, when it came out, cost back in the day, if I'm not mistaken, around 40 Swiss francs.
This is something which I didn't like and was surprised, but it was a lesson. It was a learning thing. I mean, they didn't know how to price it first. It was 34.95, 39.95, 44.95, etc. Until finally they decided to price the watch at 50 Swiss francs, 50.00, not 49.95. And this is what I like, because it was a clear statement. Here, 50 francs, and for 50 francs, you get lifestyle, fashion, and time. I think it's the cheapest lifestyle product in the world. And this is really what amazes me. And that's when I launched the clip. For me, it was absolutely clear that the price could only be 50 Swiss francs and nothing else. Because as much it was a lifestyle product. But I had two partners who helped me to finance the start of the clip. And about 3 months or 2 or 3 months before the launch, they got cold feet and were really surprised, afraid to launch the product at 50 Swiss francs. And they said, Michel, I think we have to bring the price down. I think we're too expensive. So they asked me to make a market research, which was done by McKinsey. And the report came out about 2 weeks before the launch. And the result was devastating, absolutely devastating. $9.95 would be the maximum price for a useless gimmick, which, like a clothespin, which in addition gives the time. Nobody would pay more than $9.95. At that point, I had already put 35,000 watches in production, ready for the launch. And my partners, they were really scared to death and said, what shall we do? And I said, enough. Just go ahead, go forward. And as you mentioned, it was my gut feeling. And my gut feeling was just so strong that I said, it is 50 and it cannot go wrong. Of course, we had quite a big advertising budget. We had 1 million Swiss francs to launch the product. And I decided to spend that 1 million in the first 2 months. Very, very strong. I didn't want to have a long campaign. I wanted to have a short campaign, but very, very strong. We could afford to buy 9 TV spots. And the 9 TV spots, we put them on every day at prime time. And the last 2 days, twice, always prime time. But in prime time, in 1 week, the TV budget was gone, but this is what took the product immediately immediately up off the hook. It was amazing, really amazing. 35,000 pieces sold in the first 2 weeks.
That's bonkers, as they say in English, British English. Now, you weren't a one day fly, a temporary success, because going from there, we come to another height, the Swiss ethno fever. And thanks to you, I link the Edelweiss with everything Swiss, but you made Switzerland trendy. You made it a lifestyle. And you made more than just watches with Edelweiss. Talk us through that. How did you come up with the idea? What did you do? And what heights did you guys achieve?
Okay, so just as a transition, let me first maybe tell you about the end of the Le Clip story. What we achieved with Le Clip was, in the first year, we sold 1 million Le Clip watches for 23 million Swiss francs in sales. But which actually, this was my problem, because suddenly the company was growing so fast that I couldn't finance it anymore. I ran out of cash and I needed to find investors. And I found an investor through which I lost control of the company. I became a minority shareholder, and a couple of months later was fired from the company. It was a very hard landing and a tough learning. And so I was devastated. I must say, I was devastated. I was down on the ground, didn't know what to do with my life. And it took me a good 6 months to recover and to become creative again. And I made a trip around the world to see old friends and people I had been working with in my past, to get some input and some ideas. And I remember most of them told me, why don't you start your own company? And why don't you make a watch, a typical a watch which reflects the spirit of Switzerland? So I was thinking about that, talking to my wife and friends, and what is a real Swiss brand, a Swiss watch? I mean, kind of like the Swiss Army knife of watches. And when you look at the real symbols of Switzerland is Edelweiss and cows. And so I decided that's it. And I look at cowbells. When you look at the cowbells, they are decorated with cows and Edelweiss. And this became actually the input for the design of the watch case. Cows which walk around the bezel to give the time. And the Edelweiss, which we embroidered on the strap, which was a very, very strong and typical trademark of the Swiss ethno watch.
And then you took it further, not just watches.
Yeah, but this was actually, also when we launched this again, I realized and learned from Le Clip, you only have one chance to leave a first good impression. Only one chance. And when you get out of the market, you have to be very, very strong. You have to be strong and powerful. That means you have to advertise, you have to communicate. But one of the most difficult things was with the Swiss ethno watch that I didn't find any retail, despite the success I had before with Le Clip. But also with Le Clip, actually, I didn't find any watch dealers who wanted to buy Le Clip at that time. And we realized that to sell Le Clip, you have to sell it through markets, through department stores. Through department stores where we have big traffic of customers. And this was the success also of Le Clip, that we were in prime locations. We were in prime location in Switzerland, in England at Harrods, and then in the United States with Macy's, Bloomingdale's, etc. And maybe just to come back and tell you that story of Le Clip in England at Harrods. Harrods, we started with them, and they gave us a counter on the ground floor, and we could give them about 900 watches to start off, but the 900 watches were sold in 3 days. And it happened that during that time, the buyer, one of the buyers of Macy's, was in London visiting the store and saw the success of Le Clip. And next day, or a couple of days later, somebody called me from Macy's, New York, and said, Mr. Jordi, we want to buy your watches. We have to launch them here in the United States. Come on over and let's see what we can do. That was on a Wednesday or Thursday. Well, on Saturday, I sat on a plane with my advertising agency, Gray Advertising, on our flight to New York. And we saw them on Monday, and we told them, look, unfortunately, we are short of production. We have only 100,000 pieces for sale in New York, for the New York market to start from. And the chairman was there who assisted the meeting, said, we want to buy them all. We buy the 100,000 pieces. I said, well, only against LC. We don't work anything else but LC. And the most we can give you is 30,000 pieces, because we want to have some watches also for the other big dealers in New York, like Saks and Bloomingdale. And in the end, actually, we agreed on 50% of the allotment, 50,000 pieces, but they had a 1 week head start in New York, and the whole Macy building in New York was decorated with Le Clip watches. And it was an absolutely amazing success, as you mentioned. And Andy Warhol, how to say, Andy Warhol came to the launch and to our press conference, and he said to me, Michel, next time when you come, let's do your portrait. I want to make your portrait. And unfortunately, the next day, he died early, 19, let me just get it right, 87, yeah. On February 87, I think he died. It was too bad. That's one of my regrets, that I could never have done my portrait by Andy Warhol.
Imagine that. But how many people could say they worked with him on their product? Talking about the collab trend going on both in the watch industry and the fashion industry. So kudos to you.
As I said, I was out of a job. I was fired from Le Clip, and I didn't know what to do. And then the people said, you have to make a typical Swiss watch. So I made the Swiss Esther watch, Carls and Edelweiss. And I tell you, I had a hell of a time, because I had a very good salesman, young salesman, which I had with the Swiss-French part in Geneva. And he traveled more than a month through the country here. He could not open a single retailer to carry the brand. And it was very, very tough again, also in the Swiss-German part. So I finally decided, instead of going wide and large, I will limit distribution to only 100 point of sales nationwide, and supported by a very strong advertising budget of 1.5 million Swiss francs. This is back in 1989, 1.5 million Swiss francs.
So going from that trend, you, out of the blue, going from a mass market spiel, creating products that are high volume, you went into the stratosphere of watchmaking, going utter haute horlogerie, and you created a groundbreaking design and watch, basically two on top of each other, where the top swivels 270 degrees. And I remember vividly as a child seeing that watch in Basel, and it blew my mind. I went with my father every year to Basel World, and I saw it there. And the pricing was around 80,000. I want you to tell us the story of how you pivoted. Fun fact for our dear listeners and the collectors, if you look at Michel Jordi on Chrono 24, there's still 29 watches available right now while we're recording this. The highest is 58,000 euros still, going to around 12,000 for titanium version. But it's actually very cool to see because this is literally history in watchmaking. Please walk us through that chapter in your watchmaking career.
Yeah, maybe the end of the ethno period also is correct, as you mentioned, which actually was so successful that it branched into an image transfer of many other products like leather goods, jewelry, even perfume, etc. And unfortunately, in the end, although we had very good patent agents, we were well protected. But when you have suddenly so many people, tens of companies who copy you and copy the trend, and finally can find copy watches at any kiosk almost walking through the country. Really, this was the end of the Swiss Ethno watch in 2003. And after 2003, I needed, I still was full of energy and had certain ideas and wanted to go into another field, another area. And I think what is important here to mention also is, I had mentioned before, Jean-Claude Piver with Blancpain, who was the visionary and say we have to stay with mechanical watches. There was another great man, Frank Muller, who came up and said, look, we take a simple engine to make it, it's like a tractor to make the movement work, which is an etna movement, the most simple basic one. And on top of that, we put complications, you know, and that is where he started with his image and his brand, Frank Miller, master of complications. And I realized that the uh, the possibilities, the market potential was just absolutely amazing. But again, you have to be different. If you're not different, there is no chance that you can be successful. And one of my important roles has always been that I didn't want to compete in price. I never want to compete in price in anything I sold because there would always be someone who would be cheaper than yourself. And so I had to be innovative and creative and bring something new. And so this was the creation of the Twins Heritage, which were two movements, one on top of each other. And as you mentioned, one of the big problems again was, or issues was, how to position the product. And for each product I started, I always spent a lot of time in analyzing the market and thinking of how to position the product. And I think this is an absolute key success factor. I can say today, in hindsight, that 50 Swiss francs for the clip was absolutely the right price. I remember the Swiss Ethno watch. I had a lot of friends, even to Ernst Tomke and Rolf Schneider, my dear friend Rolf Schneider, of founder of Ulysse Nardin, who unfortunately died too early. He told me, Michel, 150 francs is the maximum you can pay for it. You can ask for it. And I decided there to start with 395. And 395 was the right price. And why did I decide 395? Because just a couple of years earlier, Tissot brought on the market a watch which was called the Rock Watch, which they sold at 300 Swiss francs. 300 Swiss francs. This is a, a great price for a good marketing product, and they were very, very successful with that. And originally, I also want to position the Etna watch at 300. But no matter how many times I went through the calculations, there was no way to meet that price. So this is what absolutely made me decide to be actually 375 first and later moved up to 395. And also that price was right and was a very, very big part of the success. But then, as you mentioned, Alon, when we come up with the next product, the Twins Heritage, exclusively produced in 18 karat gold, with very, very special limited movements. I mean, you can go to any business school, any marketing school, and they will tell you the guy is nuts. I mean, 53.95, 70,000. The starting point was 69,800 or something. So 70,000. I mean, everybody tells you this guy is nuts. But I tell you, we made an amazing, amazing launch campaign again, which brought us a lot of write-ups in the press. We had full pages set up. We were on TV, we were on the radio, and within two weeks, the production was completely booked for the next 12 months, which actually made it for an easy start. And the first year, we made 5 million Swiss francs in sales.
And then you were gone, and we missed you. And to my big and positive surprise, Adrian introduced us. Now, I can have you back on the show 10 times, and I can talk to you for hours. There's so much here to digest and to dissect what you've told us. I want maybe to ask you if you were willing to come back on again. We treat this as an introduction chapter. I want to walk through now the rest of your career, because you became a mentor, a coach, an author, a worldwide speaker. I want to do that. I also want to spend a bit of time on this episode talking about the current state of the watch industry, how you see things, and if you can give tips to youngsters. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine with me. I wasn't prepared at all. I'm not prepared at all to that question, and uh, I'm a little bit far maybe now from what is going on nowadays in the industry. But I mean, there's certain similarities again which I see, which was when in the 70s the Japanese came on with the quartz watches. Although the quartz, you probably know, is a Swiss invention, but the Swiss didn't believe in it and sold the patent to the Japanese, who made it successful and almost killed the Swiss watch industry. And then came the LED and the digital time, LED and LCD, in which the Swiss people didn't believe in. Which I think at that time in hindsight, you could say it was the right decision. So now, when you see with the Apple watches coming on the market and so many other electronic watches, smartwatches, you can ask yourself again, are the Swiss doing the right thing, or are they again losing a big portion of the market? And I think it's a question which is very, very difficult to answer. I personally would dare to say that today, to read the time or read the time, you actually don't need a watch, because you can find the time. First of all, everybody has a smartphone, so you have the time on your smartphone. You find it on your refrigerator, on the cooker, in the car. I mean, anywhere you go, time is everywhere. But what you cannot, what when you're wealthy, you're in a certain lifestyle. One thing you have to understand: when to show your wealth, you cannot go into a restaurant with a Ferrari, but you can go into a restaurant with a lifestyle, high quality branded Swiss watch. And I think this is the market, the mechanical market, the really, really special lifestyle watches. This is where Switzerland can come in.
I've been meaning to ask you already the whole recording. Do you have a wristwatch on your wrist right now?
You will be surprised, but the wristwatch I put on, it's also the person who put us into contact, is a sequin, which designed by Adrian Buchwald. And I'm not going to do any advertising direct, whatever. But I think for me today, it's probably the best product on the market. And I'm wearing the kinetic one. I mean, they have two type of watches. One is kinetic with a rotor, mechanical motor, which rewinds the watch all the time. And they have another model which is a solar dial which charges up the watch solarly. And again, I would compare that solar dial compared with the digital, the LED and LCDs, which again, I mean, anybody can do. The Chinese will do it, and whatever the Koreans, and they may again be able to overwhelm the market. But what they cannot do is the watch with that beautiful. You turn it around, you look at the backside with the kinetic automatic rotor. It's a beauty. It's a real beauty. And, and it exists of only 8 components. And those 8 components make it such a beauty. And it's the only watch in the world today, which never needs recharging. It never needs recharging. You charge it yourself with your own movements and with your own wrist. And congratulations to the people, to Adrian who thought about that product. And I think this is where the place of Switzerland is. It's innovation with without batteries. There is no battery, and there is no waste. I mean, the batteries are and right, and I mean, running out of energy. The plastic, the smartwatches today with batteries, they always run out of energy, and they stop. What do you do when your watch suddenly stops?
Exactly that. And me personally, I have that version as well. And I have one that's a solar charger. Adrian was generous enough to offer also a watch which we raffled off in our community. So the community is rather known with Sequent. I hoped you would wear a twin, and I guessed you had a connected device on your wrist. And secretly, I wished you had on each wrist a watch. Why do you wear a Sequent, sir, if I may ask?
Because it's very simple. It's very simple. At the same time, for me, actually, it's not just a watch. It's a health monitor. It's much more than a watch. And today, watches have to be a smartwatch has to be a health monitor to give you so much more information, which is linked to your iPhone. So you can connect it thanks to their Oxy mode. It is a special application. You get all those health informations about yourself, about the quality of your sleep, and etc. So many things. And I think this is the future. It's a health monitor, but also a watch which you never have to charge up, and it gives you the guarantee that it will never run out of steam.
Perfect. You gave me the answer that I hoped for, because my dad is, I believe, 1 year older than you are. He double wrists, so he has a mechanical on one hand and a smart device due to his health on the other one.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
I want to go and do a deep dive on this, if I may. 2 questions relating to connected / smartwatches. First being, when they came on the scene, and especially Apple, did your gut feeling tell you this is as much of a crisis as the quartz crisis was in the 70s for the Swiss industry? More or less? So that's part one. So I'll split it up. So what do you think, Mr. Jordi? When that arrived, what did you think? Did you think it was a danger for the Swiss watch industry?
I don't think it's a danger of the Swiss watch industry because it's another field of time today. It's another field. But also there's so many things on that watch which actually you don't even need it because you have the same information on your iPhone. So you don't even need actually the Apple Watch is obsolete. You don't need it on the phone. Why would you need a watch to make a phone call? Because anyway, you need a phone call. You need the watch itself is too small to carry all those information, and so many information you have to read them on your iPhone. And then plus the dial, the size of the information is so small that it's very, very difficult to read. I think it's also part of how shall I say, a trend or a fashion or an era which will evolve again and go somewhere else. Whereas I believe that, I mean, really, Secret has an unbelievable uh, potential, but they haven't found yet the right way or the right investor in order to make it global and to the size it deserves, to take it to the place it deserves.
Do you see the watch industry, and you can give me a global perspective, going in the next decade or two? Do you think that smartwatches will wipe out the luxury segment? Does it help? And you can take it any direction you want. So, what's your outlook specifically for the watch industry, watch brands, and maybe collectors? Would you mind sharing your vision?
Yeah, again, I mean, they're two completely different markets. I mean, and each one will live by itself, and each one will. I mean, if you look, I mean, Apple today they make I think 30 million or 40 million watches a year, uh, whereas the whole Swiss watch industry, everything altogether, is around 25 million. So you can see already in terms of volume and quantity, they completely already overran the Swiss watch industry. But as I said, the Swiss watch industry will remain in this prestige lifestyle area to have something. Also, I mean, look at the slogan of Patek Philippe: from generation to generation, you hand it over to your children, your grandchildren. I mean, it's something completely different. Whereas Apple Watch, and there I understand that the Swiss watch industry, or even the watch group, is it's very, very difficult to compete with a company of that size, of that. I mean, the 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 money, the structures, the financial resource, everything behind it. I mean, it's just hard to beat. So it's a segment which will survive in its own field. I don't think it will disappear, but it will evolve. It will evolve even faster than we think. But as I said again, the big drawback is you have to charge it up all the time. It runs out of energy. That is for me the big drawback.
So, you are 100% convinced that today's children in kindergarten will aspire high-end luxury mechanical watches.
No, I'm not saying that. No. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think so. I don't think so. This is I would say all the new generation, young generation, they will go for the smartwatches. I think most of it, they grow up, they live with this, and I think probably once when you're over 20 or 30, you have succeeded in your life, and you have a certain amount, you want to have something different. And as I said, you cannot go into wrestling with your Ferrari, but you can go into wrestling with your Audemars Piguet or Patek Philippe or whatever.
Okay, clear answer. Now, you said that the brand that today does it well is Sequent. Please give me some more watch brands that impress you and why.
Well, there are a few watch brands who, it's quite amazing of what that they've done and how they succeed. And one of them is definitely Audemars Piguet as a family business. I mean, it's amazing how they have grown and what they have done. And today, I mean, Audemars Piguet is definitely one of the great status symbols of the Swiss watch industry. I mean, for me, Patek Philippe is the top. I mean, I've traveled around the world, I don't know how many times, maybe 50 times. But wherever I traveled, where I went to, in the best watch shops anywhere in the world, you found Patek Philippe and also, of course, Rolex. They're two completely different brands because Rolex is a volume brand, it's a mass brand, status symbol for anniversaries, weddings, etc., etc. whereas Patek Philippe is really, really high end and in its own place. And then, as I said, Audemars Piguet at a different level, but it's a great status symbol. And one of the guys who really, really impressed me and has come very far is Richard Mille. Richard Mille, it's a fabulous brand, and it's just as you'd say, the complete opposite of smartwatches. It's a car on the wrist, and everything is mechanical, and that's the beauty of it. If you like mechanical stuff, you go for something like it. If you want electronics, the young kids, you want functions, you want information, then you may go for a smartwatch. And then, of course, it's also a question of price. The price is a big issue.
Do you want, maybe you're a great marketeer, should we take it a bit broader, out of the watch industry, out of Switzerland? What brands do you think do it right today? Is there one or two, three brands that are top of your mind by any chance?
Well, I think, look, there's so many brands, so many different fields, so everybody has its own sensitivity or is attached to different things. And then again, like everywhere, it's all a question of financial resources. How much can you put into marketing? Because this is in the end which will determine who are the winners and who are the losers. How much can you put into marketing? And then also, of course, distribution. You need today a very, very strong distribution. And I think distribution now, of course, we have internet, online, etc. But still there, I think in times of customer fidelity and distribution, I think there is still a lot to do. And we'll see, how it will evolve. But one thing which is sure, that you can't stop time and you can't stop progress. And we're off for many exciting new chapters in the time of history, in the history of time. That's what I wanted to say.
Beautiful perspective, putting it in history of time. Maybe last final question for today, for this episode. And again, I've said at the beginning of the episode, especially entrepreneurs, if you want cool tips, raw, uncut, not politically correct, obtain Michael Jordi's book, Ignite That Spark, 10 Commandments of Entrepreneurship. You can win one of the 10 that we're giving away in our community. If not, just order it. There is an ISBN number, 978-385932-9607. Michel, what would you give as a tip to young entrepreneurs today, in today's world, today's economy, the volatility? What are a few tips that we might not find in the book?
I just read yesterday, on internet, Google. My wife is a great follower of all these life philosophies and things. And it comes up, what are the most important things in life? And the amazing thing was, number one, they put in time, number two, health, and number two, I don't remember the three, but one was time and second was health. And I would dare to say, I would change that around and say first it's health, and then second is time. But time is really, I think, and no matter where you live, no matter who you are, the most important thing you have in your lifetime is time. Time, and make the best out of the time God or this world has given you. And when I could address myself to youngsters is, start your own business as early as possible. Because also, it depends where you live, where you're born. But when you live in a democracy, like we are lucky in Europe here to have a democracy, and you can choose what you want to do yourself. So I would say, for me, I have always been independent. I started my first business when I was 23, which was back in 1971. I would say today, start your first business while you're still at university or at school, whatever, because I mean, there you have time to fail, break your neck, and start all over again. Because you will make mistakes. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried to make mistakes. Break your neck, run your head in, and start it all over again. And in the end, you'll be successful because once you're married, you have children, you have a responsibility. It's too late to fail. Fail early and start all over again. This is what I would like to say. And then maybe I had the opportunity with my Whistler Clip and with Michel Jordi to sell the company. And I never wanted to sell the company because I wanted to keep them and hand them over to my children one day. And maybe this is one of my mistakes or one of my regrets. I had the opportunity and I had spoken to some other friends who had experiences. And the only thing I learned with guys about this is, you know what the best time to sell is? Too early. The best time to sell is too early because if you sell too late, it's gone.
Amazing tips. It proves that Mr. Jordi is a legend because another legend that he mentioned on this show, which is Jean-Claude Biver, gives, and on this show did so as well, the same advice about starting young and while in uni. Mr. Jordi, thank you so much for coming on, sitting down with me, sharing your passion and your knowledge. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for both sending Rob and I your books, offering them to our community, and for your precious time. Hope to have you back on the show in the near future. Rests me to thank all our dear listeners for taking the time to listen to this episode. You can find all our previous episodes on our official website, www.therealtime.show. And on Instagram, you can find us at therealtime.show. If you want to support the show, please subscribe, like, rate, and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, feedback, and or criticism, please do send us a message. You can also DM us if you want to join the TRTS community. You can reach Rob via email, rob@therealtime.show, and on Instagram at robnuds. You can message me via alon@therealtime.show and find me on the gram at Alon Ben Joseph. Stay sane and keep on ticking.